Hi, welcome to Investing for Millennials. Today I'm going to be talking about Tesla's Autopilot and autonomous driving features and how basically those components add to Tesla's growth and how we can basically consider those factors into its price and how it should go into the future. So I'm basically going to be talking about the history of Autopilot, kind of this current state of Autopilot, and then where we think it's going to be going into the future in this video. And this video is basically going to be part of a series where I'm going to be talking about the reasons why I'm bullish on Tesla, and I think this will be really good. This series will be really good for anybody who is an investor in Tesla and wants to know more about a lot of things that are going on, or if you're thinking about being an investor in Tesla and maybe these are some reasons that you also resonate with and why you might want to get invested with Tesla. So feel free to drop a comment below about what your thoughts are about that. And if without further ado, let's get started. So to start off, I'm just going to go over a kind of brief history of the of Autopilot at Tesla. And basically, it was first announced in October of 2014, and then was rolled out basically a year later in 2015. And it had kind of some simple had basically some simple autonomous features in the driving capabilities, and also some parking assist features. And some of those features did include the adaptive cruise control, as well as some auto steering features. And in terms of the parking capabilities, it could pull. Had auto summons, or you had summons, so you could pull your car in and out of its spot, which is also another cool feature. Then it wasn't until 2016 when they rolled out Autopilot 8.0 where they were able to make a lot of minor improvements. I don't know the exact number of changes that they made, but over dozens and dozens of some little small changes to the software to really improve a lot of those features that they already established. As well as they upgraded the software in the cameras, and the cameras were now able to pick up 6 times as many radar objects, which, as far as I understand, basically means that the more objects the camera can pick up, the more information and data the software can utilize to interpret and map out the surrounding area, basically. And the more data you have, the more accurate it's going to be and more safe, which is great. And also, its interesting fact is that at the end of 2016, Autopilot had operated actively on the version 1 hardware for 300 million miles and 1.3 billion miles in shadow mode, which is a crazy amount of data. And that's one of the things that I think Tesla has a really good advantage in, actually, is the fact that they have so much more data in driving miles than all these other car companies do. Real data, real driving miles, which is a big factor. And then this basically moves on to kind of the current state of Autopilot, which is version 9.0. And version 9.0 has a lot of really cool features, and some of them are still technically in beta, but they are usable, which is really cool. So basically, just going down the list, the first one is enhanced navigation, and that is basically just more information about upcoming turns in the navigation, something's going to be a sharp turn, how far it is away, maybe some exit information. That's kind of more on the simple end. More updates to obstacle aware acceleration. So this basically means that the car will automatically reduce its speed if it senses an obstacle in front of it. So if you're going at a low, as far as I understand, if you're going at a low enough speed in the first place and it senses an obstacle in front of you, it will automatically slow and stop down your car, basically as a safety precaution, which is really cool. And one of the greatest features that they added is navigate on autopilot. So you can basically plug in your destination and click on your autopilot, navigate on autopilot feature, and it will be able to do highway changes, interstate highway changes, and basically keep you on the road as long as you keep accepting it with your blinker, which is really incredible. And then besides that, there's basically just more autopilot controls, like I said, accepting things with your blinker, lane changes, going off the highway. It'll do that automatically, but you need to accept them still currently to make sure you're aware of what's going on. There's also blind spot monitoring. So I think now that if you might want to make a change and there's something that's in a blind spot, it'll notify you before you make that change, so that you don't end up hitting that type of car. And then there's track mode, which I think is just for the Model 3 performance, but I'm not 100% sure on that. And that just basically allows you to really modify exact features of your car. You know, if you want to do some crazy drag racing or track racing, you know, anything along those lines, and you really want to modify those exact components, and that's perfect for that. Which is that's not for a lot of drivers, but for some drivers that does matter. So. And then basically the other component is the full self-driving capabilities, which some of the things I'm about to say are already announced, and then a lot of them are promised to be finished by the end of 2019. And that includes automatic lane changes with no accepting, automatic highway interchanges with no accepting, navigate on autopilot on ramp to off ramp, basically just being able to fully autonomously get an off and on the highway without an issue, auto park, including parallel and perpendicular parking, advanced summoning features, which include remote automatic car retrieval, automatic garage door opening and closing upon leaving and entering, which is really incredible. And I'm going to get to more about that in a second, about some of these auto park features. And then the coolest part, which is this is certainly not here yet, but promised to by the end of 2019, is traffic lights and stop sign recognition and response, and automatic driving on city streets, which is basically saying that, you know, currently autopilot is really just for the highway and for main roads with no intersections, and it's going to be able to do intersections, which is a big deal, and pretty much be able to drive anywhere, from what I understand. And what's cool here is, as you can see on the Tesla website, there is something about autopilot, which I found, which I think is a really cool thing, and this is on their website, so this is something that they're really backing. From home, all you need to do is get in and tell your car where to go. If you don't say anything, your car will look at your calendar and take you there as assumed destination. Your Tesla will figure out the optimal route, navigating urban streets, complex intersections, and freeways. So, you know, that's really basically saying that it's going to be able to navigate almost any type of street, and with these automatic features that are so cool. And then to your destination, when you arrive at your destination, simply step out at the entrance and your car will enter park seek mode, automatically search for a spot and park itself. A tap on your phone summons it back to you. So that would be so awesome if you could just if you could literally drive to your destination, get out at the front entrance, and then you just hit a button that says go find a spot and park there, and then your car just does that. That is incredible. And then you want to leave, go home, you just walk out of your place, and you just hit find me, and then the car will come find you, and then you'll go home. It's like absolutely incredible. So, you know, these are some of the features that I feel that are, you know, they're out there, but it's still very new, and some of these really cool, you know, very novel features are still coming and are not there, but they're supposed to be here by the end of 2019. And I think that this is one factor that people aren't really considering in buying a Tesla too much at this point, but I think it really will be in the future, because I think people will want to say, do I want to, you know, spend an extra $10,000, maybe $20,000, but I'll be able to, you know, my car will be able to park itself, and my car will be able to find me, and it will fully self-drive itself to my destination. I don't have to do any focusing, especially for people who know that they're sleepy drivers or they're bad drivers. They're going to be able to prove the safety level is so much higher that if you don't have it on, it's going to seem like dumb almost. So yeah, so that's really exciting. And yeah, and so then the other component that I wanted to speak about also is basically the competitors in this space and what the competitors have to do and what their technology is like. And the biggest competitor that people know about is something called Waymo, which is Alphabet, which is Google, that's their work towards making self-driving autonomous vehicles. And what their model basically is they're not a car company, they're really a tech company. So they are working on making, you know, the correct sensors and the correct technology to put on a vehicle with the software to basically adapt that vehicle for autonomous self-driving. So it's very different in the Tesla model, where they're building it into their cars, and in addition, they can build the hardware into their cars. So there's a different fundamental difference between these two companies, which is important. So Waymo has a lot of technology and it's really great, but as far as I understand, it's still very expensive. They've been able to reduce the price a lot, but it is still pretty expensive. And they don't have nearly as many miles as Tesla does on their roads, and they have not been able to process as much data. So we're still gonna have to see what's gonna be happening with Waymo, but I think in a couple of advantages, like how Tesla has these mass marketed cars and how the hardware's already installed, so they can just roll out these updates and they can roll out the technology like that, makes a big difference. So, and then besides that, there are some larger car companies like Renault and Toyota, and they're doing a lot of, they're spending a lot of money and they're doing a lot of investing and conducting a lot of research. Some at universities, some at private institutions, where they're basically trying to figure out how to improve the safety and what features that they can add to their cars that make the most amount of sense to this. And some of these big car companies, they do have very futuristic prototypes and some cool things that are that are in the books. And as you can see here in this picture, this is one of the Renault cars from CES this year. It's very futuristic. It's like a luxury. Everyone sits around and the car just takes you where you want to go. And these things are really cool, but these are all just prototypes. This is nothing that they've mass marketed. And for the larger car companies, they have rolled out a couple things in terms of some of the parking assist features. Like there are definitely certain cars that will be able to parallel park themselves, or give you a lot of assistance in the parking process, which is to be stated. But as far as I know, there have not been any mass marketed cars that have been able to do auto steering and adaptive cruise control, which are two really big features of Tesla. And currently, and very, very soon, by the end of the year, it'll be full, theoretically. And we're going to get into that in a minute too. So, and then another thing I wanted to point out is the over-the-air updates that Tesla does with their autopilot features. How if they decide that they want to do an update and change certain features, or if something's wrong with the safety, they can just do it in an instant, and people will just download it, when those things come online into their vehicles. So that's a really, really cool feature. And I think that a lot of the other car companies, they do have some over-the-air updates, but they're for very minor things like updating maybe your maps, or maybe your audio features, or maybe your playlist, something like their playlists. But Tesla released functional updates where you can, not be able to auto steer, and then you can auto steer. You can not be able to drive, with traffic lights and stop signs, and then you will be able to. Right? That should theoretically be an over-the-air update to an extent. So yeah, I think the startups have some compelling technology, but the real struggle is mass marketing these vehicles. The prototype is not the difficult part. And with these larger companies, while they are doing research and they're investing in this, they're still behind, and they haven't rolled out any of these types of things into their mass marketed vehicles yet. So that's a factor as well. Now I want to talk about where the future of Autopilot is going and what things we can be excited about. And we already kind of spoke to a bunch of them with some of the full self-driving features for this year, but two quotes that I really like that I want to share. Here's one from the Arkk Invest podcast that was recently done. And basically, Elon Musk just says, "Feature complete, full self-driving this year with certainty. This is something we can control, and I manage Autopilot engineering directly every week in detail, so I'm certain of this." And then another quote from the Model Y Unveil: "It'll be able to do basically anything by the end of this year, just with software updates, which is pretty cool. And as I was saying before, that's over-the-air updates. So that's doesn't need any hardware modification. So he seems quite certain about the time frame for this being rolled out. While other things have been a little wishy-washy, I think he's pretty confident about the fact that they're going to be able to roll out all of these really awesome full self-driving features by the end of this year. Yeah, so just to wrap up this video, I just kind of want to say that this has just been a summary of Autopilot and the autonomous features of Tesla. And personally, my take on this is that this has not been priced into Tesla and its growth at all. People, if you've ever listened to any of the quarterly meetings calls or quarterly earnings calls, they don't really talk about the autonomous features that much. It's all about Gigafactory and production and demand and price margins and profit numbers and revenue, but they're not talking about the future of the autonomous features. And what I thought was interesting too is in the Model Y Unveil event, they even touched on it very little. There was just a little blip at the end where Elon Musk said, "Oh, and obviously there'll be autonomous driving, in the Model Y, like the Model 3 has going forward." And I just think they haven't fully marketed the capabilities, and I think that's going to be a really big factor in demand and what people want in their vehicles, and it's going to be very functional, and they're going to be able to prove it with all of that data that they have. So I think it's a really strong factor about it. So yeah, basically feel free to drop some comments and tell me what you think about Autopilot. Do you feel like it's undervalued? Do you feel like it's overvalued? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, and make sure to like and subscribe. This channel, I'm going to be doing lots of videos about investing and some stocks that I like, as well as some just basic financial advice that I have for young people, young millennials like myself, that are new to maybe the working force. How do you open up an investment account? Should I just put my money away in a savings account? Should I invest it? So if you want to see videos like that in the future, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and thanks for tuning in.